Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Transformational Power of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion session hosted by the Faculty of Science, Engineering, and Information Technology at Durham College. My name is Mariam Irshad, and I will kick off the session by thanking our virtual audience, our esteemed speakers, and the sponsor of the session, Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. It's great that we have all gathered on this day when we are celebrating the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Next slide, please. All of us at Durham College respectfully acknowledge that Durham College and its campuses and employment sites are located on the traditional lands of the first peoples of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. These lands are covered under the Williams Treaties and rest within the traditional territory of Anishinaabe. We offer our sincere gratitude to the Indigenous peoples who care for and through the treaty process share the lands on which we live, learn, teach, and prosper today. Kayla, next slide, please. I am privileged and honored to introduce our keynote speakers from Ontario Power Generation, Bahar Almasi and Amir Ismail. Bahar Almasi is an electrical design engineer and has over 15 years of experience advocating on behalf of equity-seeking groups within the Iranian-Canadian community. Bahar is currently working with OPG's Equity and Ethics Office in the capacity of an advisor, where she supports OPG's EDI committees and other stakeholders across the company to advance programs and initiatives in alignment with OPG's 10-year EDI strategy. Amir Ismail is a seasoned diversity and inclusion professional with over 20 years of experience in the not-for-profit and community sector. He's the senior manager for OPG's Ethics and Equity Office and previously worked at the University of Toronto's Anti-Racism and Cultural Diversity Office, as well as held the position of National Director, Equity, Diversity, and Youth Engagement for Big Brothers, Big Sisters of Canada. With this, I hand it over to Bahar and Amir for their talk, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariam. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bahar Almasi, and thank you for the introduction, Mariam. I just like to add that I do have 30 years of experience in engineering at OPG, and just recently I joined the Ethics and Equity Office, and it has been such a transformational experience for me, and it's my pleasure to be sharing some of what I learned with you today. So next slide, please. So before we start, just a little bit about OPG. We are the largest and most diverse clean power producer in North America. We invest in millions in local economies and employ thousands of people. And we also partner with local environmental and Indigenous groups to improve the well-being of our site communities. Next slide, please. So OPG has a mission to build a sustainable future powered by our electricity, ideas, and people. And in order to do that, we have an ED&I promise to accelerate equity, celebrate diversity, and foster a culture of inclusion. What that means is that we try to ensure that the workforce is reflective of our community, the communities that we serve, and that we attract, retain, and celebrate employees with their unique backgrounds, skills, and characteristics. And the end goal is to create an inclusive culture with everyone, where everyone can connect, belong, and grow. Next slide, please. So I hand it over to Amr, who's going to talk about how we do that at a company level.
Yeah, how do you do that at a company level when you're such a big organization that has a very, particular history? And so one of the things that we know that for when you think of transformation, it's a journey. Everyone is at a different pace and sometimes with different end goals in mind. So for example, at OPG, we could see that there was momentum and an appetite to support and advocate for equity, diversity, inclusion. We had several local ED&I committees that were focusing on championing ED&I, for their sites, and we have many sites across the province. And we also had many employees that were championing ED&I at the side of their desk, in addition to the work that they had to do. And I think this is something that many of us can relate to, when you really care about something and you want to make sure that something is being done about it. This can be a great time to build on that momentum and to begin to maybe introduce, like OP did, opportunities to contribute to change that are aligned and that can have a broader and longer term goal in mind. And so that really is one way when we think about transformation at the level of a company. Having said that, it's important to be mindful of systemic and institutional barriers and what role that plays within an organization. And the college is a good example. Post-secondary is a great example of the history of post-secondary when it comes to different communities. But if we think about the energy sector, if you think about the history of engineering within Canada, we know that it has not always been, a place historically of inclusion or promotion when it comes to diversity of gender, race, abilities, etc. And we also know that many communities historically in Canada have been excluded or maybe have had limited access to education, employment, supports that can really help someone enter and then thrive into a field, for example, within engineering or let's say within the energy sector. In the case of OPG, we really have to have honest conversations and take a look at ourselves as an organization and our own history, as well as identify how are we perhaps maintaining and sustaining those inequities. And that's a pretty hard thing to do when you really want to demonstrate that you're a great company and a great employer. But the truth is that there is a lot of history for a lot of our organizations, even ourselves as we are growing and understanding diversity inclusion. So having those honest conversations helps to see what do we do sometimes to become barriers. And not only for people within our organization, but also those who are wanting to enter our organization and the various communities that we have a site in or that we support. So you build on the momentum to advance change, but then you have those honest conversations about what actually needs to change and how do you sustain that change. So one way to sustain that is to ensure that there is a business case and a strategy. So in the case of OPG, we developed a 10-year plan for ED&I, as well as a plan to advance our relationships and our contributions to communities that are Indigenous. Doing so really has provided a business case for why we're wanting to transform. Because when you think about bringing people along on for change, as I said in the beginning, if people have different understandings of what the end goal is, having a business case as to why we want to transform can be really helpful, but also to identify, what is needed for us to make that transformation and what will be that long-term impact of this transformation. So at a company level, one example of this can really be enhancing the systems that we rely on to support change. So some of the ones that I'll share, data is a huge part of this work. At this point, OPG now has more data about who's at OPG in our company in terms of, how people self-identify, Indigenous, racialized folks with disabilities, women, so that we can actually understand what are the gaps in terms of employment equity. We've also ensured that employees at OPG are getting access to and supporting to build their training and education portfolio in topics related to ED&I, so that there is a culture of diversity and inclusion within the organization, and so that people can engage in a dialogue about ED&I in a manner that's respectful. And lastly, this is common for many big organizations, and schools, etc., but also for OPG. Having employment equity plans in place can really be useful to have measurable ways about how equity-seeking groups. So equity-seeking groups would be, those who have historically been excluded or underrepresented. How are they being supported to thrive? And for OPG, that journey is, for example, even looking at high schools and colleges, including our investments in the college to say, how are people getting into the field for STEM, then looking at hiring, looking at recruitment, and of course, going all the way up to advancement. All of this transformation at a level for the company requires lots of engagement and a shift in culture with the many stakeholders that we work with at various parts of the organization. And Bahar will share with you what that can look like in terms of that level of transformation.
Thank you, Amar. And next slide, please. Yes, so now I'm going to just briefly mention some of the things that we're doing at the stakeholder level to create that culture of belonging and create that culture of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So the first thing is to recognize how important it is to amplify the voices of equity-seeking groups. There are many studies, and they keep coming in, and the more people study this, it's backed up with more science that as companies give voices to the equity-seeking groups, it has a very positive effect in terms of productivity because people become more engaged with their group, ideas and creativity goes up, and innovation is improved through any company. So the way we started doing this was to create multiple structures that target different types of stakeholders. So for example, as Amar mentioned, we have different kinds of equity-seeking groups, whether it's women, people with disability, LGBTQ, 2S LGBTQ plus community, and racialized groups, indigenous people. So each of these groups of people have their own employee resource groups where they can connect together and support each other and find the mentors that they need. And together, sorry, if you could go backwards one slide, I'm still on this slide. So they can actually work together to raise awareness about particular things that they're experiencing and share that information with the rest of the company. Another structure that we have in place is the committees that Amar mentioned. So these committees are spread across the company, and we are a very big company. So it's very beneficial to have specific local ED&I committees made up of tripartite groups, so union, society, management, all working together to really target the ED&I needs of a specific local group of people within OPG. And what these people do is they come up with, again, events, and they share information directed at the needs of the culture within that local community. And their end goal is essentially just to progress the ED&I strategy that OPG has. We have the 10-year strategy, and it takes steps. So just slowly but surely taking the steps throughout the company to move our ED&I promise forward so that we can actually achieve our 10-year goal. And lastly, our end goal here is, I'm sure if you know about OPG, you know that safety is, like, OPG is known for its safety culture. It's so embedded in our culture that anyone that works within OPG takes that culture with them to the family. And so the end goal here is to, at the end of our 10-year strategy, ideally, we will have internalized the ED&I culture just as much as the safety culture. And we take that with us to the communities that we live in. And the way we do that is the small steps that we take. And I'm going to hand it over to Amar to talk about how we engage with our communities other than the ways that we described so far. So next slide, please.
Thanks, Bahar. Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, transformation for equity, diversity, inclusion is not just about changes inside the company, but also ensuring external sustainability in helping the sector. So as you'll see, on the slide are many examples of what OPG is doing to support the sector. We actually have a partnership with Durham College and Ontario Tech University. It's a $5 million investment to really help recruit and retain underrepresented students to build a more diverse pipeline of STEM graduates, for the NG sector. So a lot of folks on this call, hopefully, you will enter into the field, hopefully with OPG and many of the other, many employers that are here, or many of the spaces that are here that are wanting folks to enter into the field, enter into obviously our workplaces, but also you are the future leaders of the sector. A company like OPG and many others that, billions of dollars really actually get sort of moved around, on a regular basis in terms of our investments. And so supply chain is a great area of investment, of ensuring that if we are spending money and purchasing items, ensuring that vendors who are from groups that are equity seeking are in those conversations. Also working with vendor partners to help develop ED&I recruitment strategies, so that folk can actually get jobs that they want to have. And one of our really great examples is working with the Black Note Initiative to launch the program that will help recruit for jobs, mentorships, placements, etc., for folks who are underrepresented. So lots of good work that's happening from OPG within and outside. Again, a big focus on ensuring that we are not just doing work transformation, like within, but outside in a very holistic way. And as you'll hear from many of the other speakers today, there's multiple levels of this work that's happening. So we're very happy as OPG to be in this conversation with you all and to celebrate the month of engineering. And I think we can go to the next slide, which is our last slide to say thank you.
Kayla, next slide, please. I think it takes a moment to go to the next slide.
This is a heavy slide, Miriam. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of things happening on the slide. The slide wants to stay for a bit.
Good for us to read through it as well. Yeah. So I'm so grateful, Bahar and Amir, for your time and enlightening us about OPG's promise to EDI. You have given us sound footing for our next esteemed speakers to continue the momentum. And with that, I will turn it over to John Podpellock, my co-host for the session. John is Durham College alumnus. He graduated in 2010 from the Mechanical Engineering Technician program and specialized in non-destructive testing. Since then, John has become the owner and CEO of John Pod Inc., NDE company local to Durham region. He hasn't just stopped his career growing there. He's also a construction section manager at OPG. I will hand it over to John now.
Thank you very much, Miriam. With that, I'd also like to introduce Trisha. Tiraldi. She brings over 20 years of experience in the business development, human resources, training, and recruitment to her role as a manager, college and corporate partnership for the Ontario Association of Certified Engineering Technicians and Technologists, where she has worked since 2008. Within Trisha's role, she manages college partnerships throughout Ontario's 24 colleges, working with college faculty to ensure engineering and applied science technology students are educated on OSETs memberships, benefits, and certification processes, along with the industry expectations. The requirement of certification has grown substantially over the years, and Trisha prides herself in being an integral part of being able to educate students on OSET and how belonging to a professional association and ultimately becoming a certified member can help ease the transition from college into the industry. In conjunction with outreach to colleges, Trisha also supports and works with various newcomer settlements, agencies, and other community organizations whose clients have an engineering technology background. Trisha applies her marketing, relationship building, event planning, and negotiation expertise towards expanding awareness of OSET and growing the association's membership. Prior to joining the organization, Trisha has held management positions focused on employee training and development, along with recruiting within the retail and corporate sectors. Trisha graduated from Bahar College Business Administration program with specialized in human resource management, along with Georgian College's Teaching and Training Adult Certification program. With that, I'd like to welcome you, Trisha, and hand it over to you.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this wonderful topic that we always like to come and talk about. I like doing these types of events because it's great to be able to connect with students. So as an association, we are the certifying body for engineering technicians and technologists here in the province of Ontario. So within my role, I'm always out there speaking to students. But this evening, we are going to be talking about OSET as an association and an organization, and what our best practices are with EDI. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So when we're looking at EDI, we wanted this to be an integral role into our strategic plan and our governance structure. So what OSET has done is that we have included a key inclusion equity committee. This is something that we're very proud of, because as an association, we do have 21,000 members, and we have just about 26 full-time staff at our head office in Toronto. We are constantly engaging with all of the community organizations that assist internationally educated professionals. So we have career events that we are doing to help individuals within various backgrounds, and we are continuing to ensure that our government structure is very diverse and of course is accounted for within our board applications. Next slide, please. Now, we always like to profile and talk about our members, because we are very proud of them. And so Anil is one of our certified engineering technologists that I'm very proud of. And he's provided this great testimonial and how it's really helped him. And it really does come in conjunction with our EDI and what we're doing here. And he talks about how when he joined OSET, he became involved with the Peel chapter because he lived in Brampton, and how it allowed him to participate and work with other like-minded individuals. He talks about that how when he belonged and became involved with OSET, there was different opportunities because we have different sessions and CPD that are helping our members that showcase their meaningful contributions to society, and how these networking opportunities are very good and very supportive for our members. Now, when we take a look at our best practices, sorry, can we just go back to thank you very much. So OSET was recognized by the Ontario Fairness Commissioner for offering an alternative path for internationally educated professionals for certification. So what we did with that is that we eliminated the requirement for Canadian work experience. So what that means is that when we have members that are applying to our association, they can utilize their work experience that is outside of Canada. So that is great, and that has been a huge relief and a barrier that has now been lifted for our members. This initiative was established back in 2016, which was well ahead of the curve of both the Ontario government and other certifying bodies. We at OSET also, when our IEPs are seeking certification, we, as I said before, we don't require the work experience. So, and then of course, they do have to write a professional practice exam, but it is has been a smooth transition for them. Next slide, please. Now, pertaining to our Women in Technology, so OSET established a Women in Technology network made up of our volunteers who are women in technology, engineering, and technology related professions. And so they are at the chapter level. So we have 27 chapters dispersed geographically throughout all of Ontario. The Women in Technology Committee puts on various events celebrating and recognizing women in engineering technology throughout the whole province. So we do obviously encourage our members to get involved in these different committees and engage in our best practices at our association. Next slide, please. Now, you know, as most organizations, we are embracing social media, marketing, and all of our publication materials. So OSET recognizes all of our key awareness days, weeks, months, and represents the diversity of its membership in all marketing initiatives and publications. So for those of you that may not know a lot about OSET, so you could check us out on all of our social media channels on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, our online publications as well. So there's a lot of great information on there. Now, additional initiatives that I wanted to talk about are in 2019, OSET signed Electro Utilities Leadership Accord on gender diversity. We also each year sponsor a variety of different EDI initiatives like OSPE's annual EDI conference to Women in Technology initiatives through CC West. And then we also have our Fletcher Foundation that provides funding in Ontario to students that are in engineering and applied science technology programs to assist with programs aimed at engaging non-traditional audiences such as women and Indigenous peoples and other groups as well. So we are, these are additional initiatives that we continue to add on. The next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So in summation, as I talked about, so as an association, I would encourage you to come and check us out. We are on campus typically at least once a semester. And then of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions pertaining to student membership or anything that you want to know about OSET. My email address is ttiraldi@oset.org. And I hope you enjoyed this little snippet of information about OSET, and I look forward to hearing from all of the other speakers. We have, as I, you know, it's hard to follow OPG, Miriam, because, you know, we have so many members that work at OPG, and anytime I'm at an event where OPG is, the students are always going over there because I know it is a great place to work. So I look forward to hearing from our other panelists, and thank you so much, John, for the wonderful introduction. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much, Trisha.
Kayla, will you move to the next slide, please? Thank you.
And with that, I'll introduce Miriam Ishrad. Miriam Ishrad is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in the higher education sector. Prior to her current role at Durham College, Miriam has worked at the University of Toronto and has completed an internship at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania during her MBA studies. She has presented at conferences and authored successful funding applications. Miriam belongs to an underrepresented group and is passionate to making a difference. She has served on the alumni board of the Thomas Jefferson University East Falls campus, secured sponsors for alumni events, and fundraised for institutional scholarships. Recently, she has served on the selection committee for the Colleges and Institutions Canada's Indigenous Education Excellence Award. Welcome, Miriam. And I'd also like to welcome Samantha Cormier. Samantha works at Ontario Power Generation on the Darlington refurbishment project as a section manager within the Construction Services Organization. She holds a certificate of qualification as a construction millwright and has worked in the construction and nuclear industry for just over 10 years, having started her apprenticeship in 2012. She is currently the controlling authority and lead of the refurbishment space allocation management program, or SAM for short, which encourages shared resourcing, collaboration, and environmentally mindful solutions for material usage and other initiatives. As a controlling authority on the construction services team, Samantha works diligently with project management to ensure the success of scheduling, work execution, progression, and completion of the projects. Welcome, Samantha. And with that, I would like to get into the questions. The first one I'll direct to you, Samantha. I'd like to know, has your identity belonging to a marginalized group impacted you in your field? Positive impacts or creative challenges?
Sure, thanks, John. So firstly, being a female millwright, and then as I got into more supervisory or managerial roles in construction, it was definitely a scenario where you weren't seeing as many women in these roles or leading at all. So that, I guess, really did motivate me or empower me, and it still does to this day. But there were also certainly challenges that it had presented as well. So for example, when it came to compensation or career development, I mean, I once had a manager tell me, "You're doing very well for a young woman," as a way of denying a well-deserved promotion. So I think there have certainly been times throughout my career that my identity as a woman has impacted my success. But I always like to look at these situations optimistically and sort of use them as fuel to keep going, because I'll tell you right now that manager that said that to me probably never believed that I would be in the position that I'm in now at the age that I am right now. My identity as a Métis woman, however, didn't impact my career so much, if at all. And that's because I mostly hid that information about myself, which in turn obviously impacted me personally and emotionally. Luckily, working now for OPG, my identity is celebrated, and I'm encouraged to share and educate coworkers and teams about my Indigenous heritage.
I can add to Samantha's comments. As an immigrant to North America, I was aware of barriers that my elders had come across when they migrated. However, my experience had been slightly different. I had worked most of my professional life in higher education or healthcare setting, where my identity belonging to a marginalized group didn't create many challenges for me, with the exception of coming across few microaggressions, which I will unpack later during our discussion. In fact, many a times I have been the only person of color at the meetings, and I have been told that the lens that I brought to a topic was important. It led to building confidence in me and enabling me to create spaces for voices that are underrepresented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam and Samantha. Leading into our second question, Miriam, we'll start with you. How have you been impacted in your professional life to lead equality, diversity, and inclusion authentically and with personal passion and purpose?
Thank you, John. Having allies in my professional journey has made a strong impact on me. To embrace EDI in my day-to-day work, I strive to build a diverse and inclusive team with an understanding that it will have an impact on individual productivity. I'm committed to supporting a workplace free of bias, barrier, and discrimination, a place where each of us will welcome, contribute to, and benefit from our successes and realize the strengths of differences that the diversity brings to the table. I'm also dedicated to the privilege and power of mentoring and sponsoring individuals from underrepresented groups and to support them in their career progression wherever possible. I will hand it over to Samantha for her.
Thanks, Miriam. Yeah, and I think that as I touched on previously, I have had negative scenarios happen to me on many levels in the workplace. And so I guess that I just feel that I'd never want anyone to feel the ways that I have in my career. So I definitely also personally am committed to, hiring diversely, promoting engagement from entire teams when working with other departments, et cetera. I do work with the Durham College and the Millwrights Local 2309 to get young women and members of the BIPOC community into Millwrights and then placed at OPG. So it's certainly a passion of mine and something that I do take very seriously.
Thank you for those statements. Leading into our next question, Samantha, I'll direct this one at you. How did you find mentors in your field, and how have your allies supported you on your journey?
Yeah, so I am very fortunate to have multiple mentors and a very supportive group, a network of women and allies, many of which that I've met through programs that are, and groups that are offered at OPG. And I think that my mentors and allies have certainly supported me, presented me with opportunities, and even just offered a listening ear at times when needed. But I didn't always. Obviously, in construction, it was difficult for me to find mentors. And so I would say that if you are looking for a mentor and your company doesn't have any groups or programs that support that, similar to kind of how I came up in my career, I would consider starting one yourself. So get your colleagues together and define your goals, and then reach out to the leadership teams in your company and get some buy-in, because it is incredibly important and impactful for folks that are looking for help and don't know where to start.
I can add to Samantha's comments that I have been blessed as well with mentors and allies who have supported me tremendously on my journey. And it is through involvement in various committees actually that I have found mentors and allies in my field. Noticing the drive that I have to build a healthy and vibrant community that amplifies voices of underrepresented group, they have in fact encouraged me, provided me with platforms to achieve my passion to build a strong and welcoming workplace. Thanks.
Thank you. Miriam, what areas in your work have been affected by bias? Can you share its impact on you?
Sure. John, as I mentioned earlier, I did face bias when I volunteered for raising funds for institutional scholarships. It was during my university days. Being an individual of color, it was thought that I wouldn't be successful in the endeavor. It did impact me deeply. However, the goal of making difference for students who face economic hardships overcame the impact that I had and made me more determined than ever before to support underrepresented individuals. Over to you, Samantha.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, again, as I had mentioned before, I certainly have seen throughout my 10 plus years in construction that there are individuals that, you know, they can be sexist or ageist or are biased in many ways when considering opportunities and other things. However, impactfully speaking, I would say that, you know, these situations motivated me to take risks. So when you feel uncomfortable is when you tend to make changes and you change your life a little bit. And I think if it was not for these situations and these challenges and these uncomfortable times, I never would have actually, made the jump and applied to work at OPG if I weren't in those scenarios.
Well said. Last question, I'll end it off with you, Samantha. How have you responded in microaggression?
Yeah, so again, I personally just like to look at these scenarios optimistically. So when people think I can't do something, that's when I like to just put my head down and work harder and prove them wrong. And I know it can be easier said than done. But, you know, when somebody says or does something that bothers me, I might take the time that I need to process it. And I definitely, maybe upset about it. But at the end of the day, when people do or say, any of these inconsiderate things, it's more of a reflection on themselves than anything. And so I just like to use those people that didn't believe in me as motivation to do better and be better.
John, I can add to that it was during my university days that I faced microaggressions because I was new to North America, and this happened during one of the events where I was the only person of color. I was asked where I was originally from. I kept quiet, and they loudly asked me again the same question. To that, I politely answered, and I tried my best to bring them back to the conversation that we were having with the entire group about our studies, because I wanted to take control of that incident and what it would mean for my life and for my professional work as well. And since then, I did not face many microaggressions, but yes, just like Samantha mentioned, it did have a deep impact on me for a while. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you and Samantha for sharing those sensitive and personal topics. Thank you very much. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Miriam, to introduce our next key speakers.
Thank you, John. It is an honor to introduce our keynote speakers from the colleges and institutes Canada. Caroline Gahenhu, Director, Member Relations, has 30 years of leadership experience in public relations, strategic communications, and building partnerships between institutions, governments, and stakeholders. Caroline has a proven track record in post-secondary education as well as in public education and promotional campaigns in the not-for-profit and community sectors at the regional, provincial, and national levels. Known for her skills and competencies as a dynamic and human communicator, Caroline knows how to achieve tangible results by mobilizing individuals and various teams by acting as a catalyst between people and systems. She likes to address complex challenges that require innovative solutions and great synergy for systemic, equitable, inclusive, and sustainable transformation within institutions and the society. Our second speaker from CICAN is Julie Edwards, Manager 5030 Challenge and Member Relations. Over the last 15 years, Julie Edwards has managed efficiently diverse teams and projects in the not-for-profit, public, and private sectors, including in unionized and non-unionized environments, as well as academic and support staff. Through her 10 years of experience working for educational institutions, Julie has acquired in-depth knowledge and understanding of the challenges and opportunities within the Canadian education system. Her career hallmark is her emotional intelligence, combined with her respect and concern for equity, diversity, and inclusion. She's a great thinker and diligent doer who has developed internal processes, procedures, and guidelines to ensure efficiency and energy with an EDI lens within the teams and organizations he has worked for many years. I will hand it over to you, Caroline and Julie.
Thank you, Mariam. Can you hear me properly? My apologies. It seems like the firewalls at CICAN is now the security is so high that I cannot even access Zoom with my laptop. So my apologies if you don't see me very well. I'm participating through my phone. So thank you. Today. Thank you. So our presentation, what we would like to tell you is we do not proclaim that we are real experts in EDI, but certainly at CICAN, EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion is certainly the lens through which we try to approach all our initiatives and activities. And EDI, what I want to show you to explain as well is CICAN is the largest association of colleges, polytechnics, CEGEPs, indigenous institutions, Anglophone, Francophone, all across the country. So we have 141 members, and we are a not-for-profit organization. And we do have lots of many projects and initiatives. And the ones I'm going to focus more today are more the ones related to EDI. Next slide, please. So CICAN, everything we do, I said, we try to, and we keep focusing and aiming to adopt an EDI lens in everything we do. But the reason why we do, we try to do, and what is our kind of comment on dirait, where we're aiming towards is advancing the sustainable development goals of the United Nations. And what we believe is that EDI, if you approach the 17, you cannot approach the 17 SDGs without approaching each of them with an EDI lens. Next, please. The next slide, please. Oh, no, that one, sorry. I'm looking at my computer and my phone, so sorry about that. So what of course, we cannot pursue the 17 SDGs all at once. So what we have defined over the years at CICAN is that certainly we cannot go against without mentioning that the SDG number 4, which is quality education for all, is certainly the one which is the broader umbrella SDG. But we also pursue and have initiatives which are very well aligned to advance the SDG number 5, which is gender equality. Number 8, decent work and economic growth, because colleges and institutes train the workforce for and make sure that more people have access to quality education and can work and have a decent work and contribute to economic growth in Canada and in all the countries where CICAN has initiatives. The SDG 10 is also very well aligned with equity, diversity, inclusion, which is to reduce inequalities. Number 13, of course, climate action. You saw in the news yesterday how much the UN Secretary General is increasing the level of emergency to do something about that and to reach net zero and work on climate action. And finally, as an association, we do have this value proposition of being a force multiplier to bring people, to create this kind of a spider web all across the world, in Canada, but around the world, to help bring partners, collaborators, colleges and institutes to advance the SDGs. Next, please. The next slide, please. Oh, yes, sorry. I really have to move my own slides because I can't see them on my phone. My apologies. One in the CICAN, even before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report was released, we had put in place with the help of our National Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, we have created an Indigenous Education Protocol. And the reason why I'm talking about it is, for us, it's part of the history and why we will talk to you later. And Julie will talk to you more specifically about our 50-30 Challenge project. So that protocol has 7 principles, which is for us, and we have 71 members who have signed the protocol. And when they aspire to reach and implement the 7 principles, it helps them a great deal to move forward with indigenizing their institution and also advancing reconciliation. Next slide, please. What we did, we started by, and as we saw earlier with our first presenters, as they did within their own organization, before we decided to put a spotlight internally at CICAN first, before trying to do more and implementing more activities and initiatives on EDI. So we have created an internal EDI committee to look at how we're doing internally. We have 151 staff members now. We wanted to make sure that how we were doing, what was the lay of the land at CICAN. We have developed and implemented an important EDI policy as well that every committee members sign, our board members sign, and any staff, every staff at CICAN has signed as well. We also joined the 50-30 challenge that the government launched in October 2020, and I will not expand on that because Julie Edwards will talk about it later. And we also signed the SDG Accord, which is also an aspirational document to show our commitment and officialize our commitment towards advancing the SDGs. We also have integrated EDI principles into all our activities and work processes and procedures. Next slide, please. Then what we did is, what do we do to advance EDI and support our members in advancing themselves? Because as you know, colleges and institutes are microcosms. It's such a tough word to say in English for Francophone. So they are microcosme de la société, we needed and we felt at CICAN that we needed to help them build a capacity and help them advance EDI on their campuses and in the communities they serve. So the protocol is certainly one tool for them to advance indigenization and reconciliation. We also launched an impact initiative in 2018 and launched an impact EDI initiative in 2021. And then following that, we have also put in place a national advisory committee, which is really our advisors and guiding our efforts at CICAN internally, but also externally. We also have awards of excellence, and one category is about acknowledging and recognizing EDI excellence among our members. And we have several projects that are targeting equity deserving groups, may that be initiatives for gender related to pre-apprenticeship pathways for newcomers, for youth who are without employment. We also have our social impact projects and many international projects as well. They all have an EDI lens. Next slide, please. One of our, so the Impact EDI initiative was really supported originally by especially four institutions, but when we launched it, but now we are very proud to say that almost half of our members are more engaged in EDI and have signed or the Accord or the SDG Accord. We have 71 Indigenous education signatories, and we have almost up to 30 signatories of the 50-30 challenge that Julie will talk about later. Next slide, please. And I'm just going to give you some examples of our international projects. We have our Canadian institutions, member institutions, partners with stakeholders, partners, and other colleges in other countries where there's a need to build a capacity, and especially to build capacity of women and teenagers and girls. In many countries, we have these kind of projects, but we also have projects too. And the next slide, please, will show what we call our EFE, Education for Employment projects that are delivered in 15 countries around the world. We will also we have projects that are related to advancing other SDGs and just gender, but all of our projects nationally and internationally all have an EDI lens and have aim and thrive to increase the participation of women in the workplace and any other equity deserving groups, may they be indigenous people, individuals from the LGBTQ2+ communities, newcomers, immigrants, or people with disabilities. I will now ask Julie Edwards to continue and talk to you more specifically about this, our latest and very focused on EDI project, which is the 50-30 challenge. Next slide, please. So Julie, la parole est à toi.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. So hello, everybody. My name is Julie Edwards, and I am the manager for the 50-30 Challenge. Today, we'll just start off with the first couple of slides. And our first couple of slides, we're really going to focus on just the overall 50-30 Challenge. So if you don't mind, if we could bump ahead to 2 slides, that'd be fantastic. And the next one. Perfect. So the 50-30 Challenge is an initiative between the Government of Canada, Canadian businesses, and diversity organizations. The goal of the project is to challenge organizations to increase representation and inclusion of diverse groups in their workplaces, while highlighting the benefit of giving all Canadians a seat at the table. When we talk about 50-30, what we're looking at is the 50% is gender parity, meaning 50% women or non-binary people. You're at the right spot. That's perfect. Thank you. And the 30% signifies on boards and in senior leadership, having 30% representation of equity-seeking groups. For this, the Government of Canada, being ISED, which is Innovation, Science, and Economic and Development, created a What Works toolkit, which is a virtual set of tools that is there to assist organizations across Canada implement and develop EDI policies and procedures. And CICAN became an official ecosystem partner back in February 2022. So if we can jump to the next slide, that would be great. So there are 5 ecosystem partners for the 50-30 Challenge who have received funding from Innovation, Science, and Economic Development of Canada, and those 5 are featured on the previous slide. Perfect. And the 5 ecosystem partners, our objective is to serve the 1,900 participants of the 50-30 Challenge. So at this point, there's 1,900 organizations or business who have signed up for the aspirational challenge of meeting the 50-30 Challenge goals. And so these 5 ecosystem partners, we work together to find ways to promote the What Works toolkit, as well as serving these participants. And if we can go to the next slide. So now we get into a bit more of the specifics about CICAN's project. So this is the diagram you see is actually the breakdown of what our project looks like from a bird's eye view. Oh, there we are. And so you'll see CICAN in the center there, and we have 2 knowledge mobilization and dissemination centers. So we have Sheridan College, as well as Collège de Maisonneuve. So Collège de Maisonneuve is located in Quebec, and Sheridan is located in Ontario. Our 2 knowledge mobilization and dissemination centers have 4 primary objectives. So first, their job is to review the Government of Canada's What Works toolkit and identify any gaps that might exist and create those tools as needed so that challenge participants and colleges have what they need to implement EDI strategies and policies. The next objective they have is to serve our members, which are colleges across Canada, colleges, institutes, and des cégeps as well. They also work with their participants within their catchment area to pilot the tools that they're creating and ensure that they're tools that are going to respond to the needs of the challenge participants. And they also work with our hubs, which are located across the country as well, to build capacity within institutions so that they also have the ability to serve challenge participants. So recently as January 24th, we signed our last agreement with a hub. So we have 5 of them. We have Northern Lights College in British Columbia. We have Northern College in Ontario. We have Collège Boréal also in Ontario, Fanshawe College in Ontario, and Cégep de Marie-Victorin, which is in Quebec as well. So those 5 hubs, what they're doing at this point is they're in contact with participants from all over Canada, finding out exactly what they need to be able to better support EDI initiatives within their organization. At this point, with the with our project, we've been in full swing since since January 24th, meaning that all of the key players have been assigned to a role and have their job cut out for them. We have been in contact at this point with 1,500 of the participants. We've also hosted over 25 webinars, and we are currently serving participants across the country. And if you don't mind hitting to the next slide. And that is it. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Carolyn and Julie, to give us a broader impact of EDI from an institutional, national, and international perspectives. I must say that both of you have ended the talks on a very high note today evening. Before I hand over to John for delivering the closing remarks, please allow me to thank again our sponsor, Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, because without them, it would not have been possible to host this session. I want to thank Kayla Mizraim Alita, our mechanical engineering technician non-destructive evaluation program student, who compiled the slide deck efficiently for us and who kept us organized throughout this session. Lastly, I would like to express my gratitude for John, our Durham College alumnus, for co-hosting the session and sharing his time and talent with us. So while I will say goodbye from Durham College here in Oshawa, I will hand it over to John for the closing remarks. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I appreciate it. I'd like to quickly recap today's session. We learned many amazing things. Some of these are, but not limited to, OPG's safety culture, ED&I culture, and how OPG engages with our community, OPG's $5 million investment with Durham College to aid in recruiting and retaining and representing students, the Black North Initiative, the personal experiences of yourself, Miriam and Samantha, in relation to EDI, the OSETs program and its EDI initiatives, OSETs IEPs, the College and Institutes of Canada's lens on supporting EDI, EFE projects, and finally, the 50-30 Challenge project, just to name a few. I'd like to thank everyone for attending as well this evening. It was wonderful to hear from our guest speakers and their personal experiences. Today, we spoke about topics such as equality, diversity, and inclusion. As mentioned, this includes but not limited to things such as race, age, gender, disability, sexual orientation, social background, social status, and even diversity of thought. ED&I is essential not just in our workplace, but in our society as a whole. It is important to remember that we all come from different cultures and background and need to continue to respect everyone as equals, not just in the workplace, but in our social settings and within our day-to-day life. To quote a famous physicist, we must not only learn to tolerate our differences, we must welcome them and the richness and diversity which can lead us to true intelligence. Albert Einstein. Thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.